In the light of the shepherd, you're listening to The 100 Podcast, a show about CW sci-fi series, The 100. I'm Daniel Prime.
Hallowed be his name, and I'm Olga, the first disciple. Today, we're discussing Season 7, Episode 11, entitled Etherea.
Etherea.
It was an ethereal episode, was it not, Dan?
It was quite an episode of television for us to discuss, but first things first, we're invisible. It's an audio-only video.
Yeah, no camera can pick us up. We've been cursed by a witch. We're working on it.
Yeah, and actually, we've transcended.
Oh, right.
Yes, much more on brand.
Yeah, that's what I meant to say.
We're having some issues with a bunch of our equipment. So we are taking a week off from the video and some of our new audio equipment. Just going old school with this one. We're hopefully going to have everything fixed for next week. I'm actually getting some new stuff in too. So hopefully everything will be back on track. But for right now, we're doing it as audio. We're going to give you our first, we just watch the episode reactions, and then we'll do our longer audio podcast on for Monday, going full deep dive into all this. But just count yourself lucky, because it's like a bazillion degrees in here, and we're just melting anyway. You don't want to see us.
It's so hot. And we look dewy. Anyway.
Dewy. Okay.
It's a makeup term.
Oh, wouldn't know.
Right.
All right. So, what did you think?
I'm happy to see Bellamy again.
Mm-hmm.
Can't say I'm pleased with the outcome.
Of the end here.
Yes, but I mean, it was a good episode.
Yeah.
So, I mean, no real complaints. It added tension back into things.
Yeah. So, I mean, one thing I wanted to say off the bat that I appreciate about where we're left here is so many people there were a lot of similar theories going around as far as everybody thought that when Bellamy came back, he would be somewhat against our group. Not everybody, but a lot of people thought that, right?
Yeah.
Oh, he'll lose his memory, and so he'll be, at odds or easily molded by the disciples, or he just won't be himself. Something will be off about him when he comes back, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of people thought it was memory. Before that, people thought that they faked his death and that they'd been brainwashing him the whole time or whatever, mind capture, whatever. I think it's more interesting that they got him there in a character development way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's still, one could argue in some ways he was tortured into this, if you want to think about it that way.
At least he wasn't tortured by the disciples. He was tormented by the scenario.
Yeah.
And he's still, as always, on brand for our characters, tormented by his past.
Yeah.
So, it is one of those things that kind of makes sense for him to be manipulated by the circumstances.
Yeah.
If
he is someone, they brought up Pike in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
He is someone who's searching for understanding in a way. He's searching for something that makes him feel whole. And I think for a second, Pike's methodology made sense to him and made him feel like he was doing the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is sort of a similar idea here, right? And a much different direction.
Yeah.
Arguably both bad in different ways. But so overall, my feelings about this episode are honestly pretty mixed. I think that there's a lot to love here. I'm really, really grateful that it was all about Bellamy.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, absolutely.
I think Bob was great. I think that the actor he was playing off of did a great job too.
Mm-hmm.
I think that as far as production values, this is one of the best episodes of the series.
Yeah.
I love the world design, whatever you want to call that. The score I thought was great at numerous points here.
Mm-hmm.
I struggle with certain aspects of it. And some of the aspects we'll see by the end of the show how I feel.
Right.
But things like the glowy transcendence people, even though we don't really know what that is or whatever, it just so much screams the end of Lost to me, which I did not enjoy. Not that I like the finale of Lost.
Right.
The glowy cave with the light of magic, not the part that I liked about the end of Lost.
Right.
So
15 years later, spoilers, y'all.
Yeah. It's actually 10 years, but
I meant from the top of the show, but I see your point. Yeah.
I don't know. We're obviously it's hard to critique this yet. It
Yeah.
just makes me uneasy because we don't really know what it is, right? It just makes me uneasy because this hasn't been a mystical show. It has been a show about faith, but it hasn't been a mystical show.
Right. You're right about that. But I would argue that whatever these imprints of energy are, and for the record, they're not calling them beings. They're calling energy imprints of beings.
Yeah.
They're the evidence, the remains of of entities that transcended. So at least they're not so bold as to say this is like a person right
I
here.
guess is that, I don't know what's more bold, saying this is a person or this is an imprint of a being.
Well, once you have like green cloud energy of electromagnetism, I don't know. I feel like I can
energy, you're saying?
Yeah, like whatever did happen to them, if it's linked to an electromagnetic. I'm just saying, if we have one sci-fi glowy thing, I'm okay with another sci-fi glowy thing.
If they explain it in a sci-fi way, which I'm not saying they had to in this episode.
Right.
But having that in conjunction with his mom and again, very, very lost feeling. Very, very, we're heading towards a potential religious-y ending for the series. And these are scary signs for me.
So I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you. But at the same time, let's take... as a matter of fact, I agree with you. Yeah. I don't not disagree. I think my entire feelings on this season will be determined by the end of this season. Yeah. There are things that I can already say were unsuccessful, and I feel confident in those critiques. Mm-hmm. But now that we are in the back half, now that we have people reuniting and things coming to a head, this really depends on its payoff. Yeah. So let's put the payoff kind of aside because I have those same concerns. Yep. I don't want it to be too spiritual in its ending, but taking this episode, it was a spiritual episode. Yeah, definitely. And I think it makes sense for Bellamy's like come to Jesus moment. In this season, his return being based around spirituality and belief. Because even up to now, he's absolutely right. He believes in what he sees. He believes in what he can prove. And that has been this character so far. He put his faith in people. And those people, like Pike, led him astray.
One could argue he's doing that again,
and
though.
He is doing... I agree.
With the shepherd and Duchette.
I agree. But at the same time, the unfortunate thing is that we were talking about this in the middle of commercials. Yeah. Like, everything that Doucette is saying seems good. Yeah. Like, it seems right. Like, I mean, this is kind of the stuff that even now in the pandemic, it is the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Stay inside, stay away. Yeah. Don't be so selfish. Yeah. Like, this all makes sense for religion.
Care about people. Care about community.
Right.
Yeah.
The thing that doesn't make sense as much is to care about others, reduce your ties to those that you love as individuals.
Well, so the thing that's complicated to me beyond the light, also I guess I'll quickly throw in, people might be like, oh, well, the thing with Bellamy's mom is probably just him delirious or whatever.
Yeah, I wanted to circle back to that.
I understand that doesn't have to literally be mystical. But moving on from that, I struggle because the episode, I agree, to me, really paints Doucette as the one in the right. And Bellamy's the one in the wrong. Yeah. And he journeys to understand something greater than himself. And I think that that even though he maybe is putting his faith in the wrong place, there is a message there that makes sense for his character as far as learning to look beyond himself, learning to care about everyone and not just his people. I would say that in some ways, it feels like a little bit of a retcon of it almost feels like this is the Bellamy from like season 4 that's going on this journey. Because like season 5 ended with him being like, Maddie, don't kill all the Allegiance people, even though they just killed all your people. Everybody matters now.
Yeah, and it's a second chance for everyone.
And season 6 was all about him. I mean, obviously, yes, it was all about him saving Clark, but it was also all about him doing better. And we're not
choosing not to pursue revenge.
Yeah, and it's not just about defeating the primes, it's about saving the faithful too. So in some ways, like, I feel like he already got to that spot, right?
I agree, but there is also, I see your point about it being kind of retcon. Nonetheless, he will and has proven to be like, I will go through anyone if it means like saving an individual. So when he thought Clark was already dead, that's not vengeance is not the path to enlightenment. Echo.
Yeah.
But anyway, hope. But so that aside, like, if he saw someone holding Octavia hostage like he did in this season, he would threaten someone's life if it meant saving Octavia. That is the individual. Now, to the disciples, they're like, we need everyone collectively to believe and be soldiers in our war because it is the war for salvation. So it's one of those things where, like, there's points, you definitely have a point. I just think that this is still Bellamy Blake, the man who loves individuals, is still like consistent.
Yeah. I agree. I think the thing that's tough for me with the like belief system of the disciples and the way they've been portrayed in the show is it's hard for me to tell which things are the show being inconsistent or contradictory and which things are purposely meant to be contradictory to show the faults within the system. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you have this weird system with the disciples where everyone is important. Everyone is equally important, but also nobody's important. They can all just be killed at any moment. It doesn't really matter. We'll replace them. All that matters is the collective. But also, the other thing of having Doucette say, I love everyone, and the whole idea of like, love the stranger like they're, your savior or whatever, like.
Right.
That is really, a nice idea in theory.
Yeah. I
don't think that the world that we've seen is a world full of people who love everyone and who welcome in their neighbors and treat them as their own.
Yeah.
The world of where everyone's in love with everyone, it doesn't involve going and kidnapping people with invisibility suits.
Right.
It's
It's like Doucette is the more peaceful version of everyone. It's like, but you're all raised to be like soldiers though. So you being the more like peaceful, loving one, but also you're told to cut your emotional ties. It doesn't really. How does loving everyone equally and being unemotional for the greater good equal the same thing? Yeah,
that's the thing where it feels like it's contradictory. Which again, like last week, they were pointing out the contradictions by having Gabriel point things out. And even Bellamy at the beginning of this episode is like, it doesn't make sense that you would find peace through war.
Yeah.
But like at the same time, I just feel like, to me, having Doucette say that line about love isn't the problem, we love everyone, that doesn't feel like a contradiction within the religion. That feels like a contradiction within the show.
Yeah.
Because that just isn't, they are torturing people's emotions out of them.
You don't, out of love for everyone, you don't send people to go isolation mad to on a separate planet to have them like reprove their faith.
Yeah.
Or at least it's not one-to-one. Like Captain Meredith's actions don't line up with everything that Doucette is saying.
Yeah.
But also I feel like Doucette and Levitt are kind of the same breed.
And the other thing I guess you could argue, it's like, well, that's the story that Doucette has been told to make it more palatable. And just because he believes that doesn't mean that the religion doesn't contradict that at every turn and he just doesn't get it.
Yeah.
And that his like purity in his belief is what brought Bellamy in to something that we know he shouldn't be being brought into.
Yep.
It just, again, it's a weird feeling for me as a viewer where I'm like, everything Doucette is saying makes sense within this episode, but I know it's BS and it's turning Bellamy, and it feels like frustrating because there's nobody there who's in my spot to say, hey, that doesn't make any sense. Like,
right. It's frustrating because Bellamy, when they first get to the Cave of Ascendance or Ascension or whatever, he's right. Oh, wait, look, that's Cadigan. He was a phony cult leader. Like, that is true. But also some of the things that about lack of individualism are also true. It's like the message is good. The messenger is an arrogant son of a bitch.
Which is something that Doucette brings up at one point where he's like, if you don't trust the messenger, she actually says.
Yeah, if you don't trust the messenger, trust the message. The unfortunate thing is, by the end, because of his vision, because of, you know, his faith and the fact that Cadogan is there freaking waiting for them, Bellamy fell for the messenger.
Yeah. I will say, I feel like some of the things that I'm critiquing, the more I critique them, the more I'm like, well, in some ways, that's the genius of the episode, right? It's that it shows that what faith can help you overcome.
Yes.
Even if it's baseless, you know, if you have the right faith, it can bring you to heights that you could never get to without it.
Right.
And it can help you survive, which I think is great in a show like this where we talk about survival all the time. They don't necessarily always show that faith is one of those tools, but it also can go on the opposite direction, which is at the end where he is, you know, betraying people he cares about. I guess at the end of the day, I think it's interesting that they had him go on this journey. I think it leaves him in an interesting place of him, you know, very much, you know, the usual thing of he thinks he's doing the right thing, but you know, different points of view and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I just feel like there's too much inconsistencies in what the disciples are supposed to be.
I agree with you there.
Yeah.
I completely agree with you. And we've already been concerned because of Levitt.
Yeah.
Because of Orlando.
Yep.
Like
Dev,
who we've kind of hand waved away as being, well, he was a lower level guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But so with that stuff aside a little bit, even these high level people being like failing at keeping their religion, it's a little, in a way, it's nice that Doucette actually kept his religion. But for me, as interesting as this performance was, as well as it was done, it is frustrating to have him come back and be at odds with our people.
With only 5 episodes left.
With so few episodes left. And with the fact that he has aligned himself with like a known charlatan. Like a known, forget the charlatan, a known egomaniac.
Yeah.
Like it's worse than Pike. Because at least Pike was like traumatized. And like, I'm not saying that was, I'm happy that Pike did what he did. But you know, like, I could understand his motivations, and they were actually out of a place of like selflessness for himself.
In a weird way.
In a weird way.
Makes Pike interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, he was still like, I know what's best.
Yeah.
Any leader has a level of egomania.
Yeah.
But Bill is really like what he said to Gabriel last week. I have been chosen for like that.
Well, that's the thing. The thing that makes Pike interesting that I always love is that he says when he talks to Kane, I think it's like, he's like, if I believed for 1 second, I would turn myself over to if I believed that this would actually solve things, I would turn myself over to the Grounders.
Yes.
And I believed Pike when he said that.
I did too.
Cadogan would never do that.
No, he absolutely would not.
Yeah.
He's gross.
Yeah.
No, and that's what makes Cadogan sort of interesting in his own way, but it also makes it very annoying to have Bellamy worshiping him now.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it really depends on where we go from here. I'm excited to see him interacting with people again, and I'm very hopeful that he's here to stay now. At least
I hope he's around until the finale.
Yeah, very, very hopeful on there. It's an interesting episode because I feel like, we should be talking about other scenes or whatever. I'm like, well, like, what are we gonna, like, so much of it is all connected, right?
Yeah.
Like, is there a moment that we should be talking about? You know, like,
I don't personally, I mean, again, we can touch back on his vision of his mom. I don't really, it was spiritual. Like, this is a very philosophical episode.
Yeah.
So we're talking in broad strokes.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, the more I think about it, the more I'm like, maybe I did have the wrong take on the episode. I'm interested to rewatch it.
Yeah.
Because I think what I was a little bit, I don't know, hesitant or just like put off by, I guess, was the implication in some ways that it felt like the show was agreeing with Doucette overall. Like, and obviously not with every single thing he said, but like overall, it's hard to argue that when at the end of it, it's like, oh, now Bellamy is the bad guy. Like, you know, like, so
here's the thing. I actually completely had that thought while we were watching.
Yeah.
When it was the time had passed and it was like right before Bellamy started praying, basically.
Yeah.
I was thinking, I'm like, this show is putting a lot of effort into Doucette's preaching and his like things. And I'm like, I found myself agreeing with him. I mean, like, none of this sounds bad.
Yeah.
None of this sounds bad.
Yeah.
except for because he's not actually fully refuting the stuff that like Bellamy is laying on the table.
Yeah.
It isn't a Cadogan versus Gabriel debate where, well, it's wasn't
more
that.
nuanced.
This is more nuanced.
Yeah.
The unfortunate thing is, again, Bellamy is falling into the trap of the guy over there who's actually preaching out of his ass, kind of.
Well, I guess that's the thing, is that like I think the reason it's frustrating is because it feels like the episode is agreeing with Doucette, even though I, as the viewer, know that what Doucette is saying doesn't jive with the society that he's from. Mm-hmm. And so that, to me, it makes me frustrated, but maybe that's the point.
Yeah. In a way, it might be more of a, like, this is what it's another degree of faithfulness. It's another degree of he's a good guy who believes in this thing, that they're not the enemy. Like, just because they believe in this thing, just because they are arguably cruel to their own people.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, the cruelty comes from punishment, but arguably any society has cruel punishment.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like, I'm not going to argue that our, prison system is just either. And that doesn't involve.
Well, I mean, I think the problem with it is that it's all based on a lie, right? It's all based on. But
the thing is that Bill has convinced himself that it's the truth. Yes, he's also convinced himself that he is the like destined messenger by the universe, which is like incredibly arrogant. Yeah. But they found what they saw as evidence. Bellamy's saying, prove it, show me the evidence. Bill thought he found evidence for this.
Yeah.
So
it's fascinating. I'll certainly say that I get a lot more out of Doucette and the ideas around Doucette than I ever did with last season with the people who followed the primes, right? Yeah. They just seemed like sad, right? Yeah. And these people feel like, even though I still think of them as victims and delusional, it's certainly more nuanced than that. You know, like,
these people aren't sacrificing themselves
when fire.
Or taking their children into the woods to be left to be consumed by plants because they have the wrong DNA. It's different because here, I'm not arguing that this is a more evolved society for removing familial ties or anything like that. Yeah. But the thing is that there is no opportunity for that.
Yeah.
It's like egomania is reserved for Cadogan. Mm-hmm. Almost.
Yeah. All right, man. So we said a lot of words.
Yeah.
I think this is a good place to stop for our
I'm not sure if I'm fully going to agree with myself come Sunday either.
Yeah. No, I definitely am interested to see other people's reactions to this episode, to read, your feedback and to just rewatch it.
Are people going to be upset that we didn't really talk about Octavia and Clark and Echo and Gabriel?
I don't even know how much there is to say other than that they were shocked. And yeah, I mean, Clark is the one who got to hug him, but that was because she was the one with the key. So little time passed of Clark thinking he was dead that it all just felt like pointless for her character.
Right. And I'm not sure if there was enough emotional, visible impact for Echo and Octavia.
Yeah.
We'll notice more on rewatch.
Yeah, Octavia, it doesn't necessarily bother me as much because she has been so on Valium the whole season.
Yeah.
But
Echo's about to genocide the place for Bellamy.
Yeah.
So maybe that isn't a great part of it.
more to say on that coming down the road. All right, guys, thank you for listening. Please send us your feedback either by commenting on the video down below or emailing us at the100pod@gmail.com or tweeting us at the100podcast on Twitter.
Great.
Or you can go to our website, the100podcast.com. May we meet again.
May we meet again for all mankind.